Happy Halloween, everybody! We're going to explore some Halloween words, starting with skeleton. Everybody has one. Don't forget it. Skeleton came into English in the 1570s from a Latin word skeleton, meaning bones, which came from the Greek skeletos, which means dry or withered. This came from a Proto-Indo-European word skele, which means to parch or wither. You may be thinking that skull has a similar origin. They're both words that are associated with bones. They start with an SK and have an L, but that's just a coincidence. Skull is one of those words we got directly from Old Norse, came from a word meaning skull, skalli. It also means bald head, which I think is funny, and it's related to words like scale and shell. Now to follow my favorite trend of looking at food etymologies, where does the word pumpkin come from? Well, it came from the Middle French pompon, which is from the Latin pepo, which is from the Greek pepon, which meant large melon. Wait, French? I thought the French word for pumpkin was citrouille. Why did they change the word for pumpkin? They had a perfectly good word for pumpkin. Well, it turns out, when they found pumpkins in the New World, they were orange, right? So they thought that they'd kind of name them after oranges and associate their name with citrus. I don't get that, but you do you, French. Now, what about the special use for pumpkins? Making jack-o'-lanterns. Where does that come from? That's such a specific, strange name. Well, it's an old Irish folk tale. Get ready. This is the first ever Word Nerd Story Time. So there was an Irish drunk named Jack, right? He was a slippery shyster. He was willing to pull one over on anyone for anything. And the devil heard that he was, such a good silver tongue and decided he was going to come and take his soul. Well, Jack's like, okay, I guess you can have my soul. You are the devil after all. But hey, first, can I have one last drink? And the devil's like, well, what do I got to lose? And goes to the bar, and Jack has a drink. And when he's done, he looks at the devil and says, well, aren't you going to pay? And the devil's like, what? What are you talking about? You bought? No. And then Jack's like, oh, come on. Turn yourself into a coin. I'll pay the bartender. I leave. You turn back into the devil and walk out. It's that simple. And then you can take me down to hell. And the devil's like, okay, that sounds like a good plan, and turns into a silver coin, and Jack puts him in his pocket right next to his crucifix. So now the devil's trapped. And the devil's like, okay, let me out, and I won't come back for 10 years. And Jack's like, okay, sounds like a good plan. 10 years pass, devil comes back. And Jack's like, okay, deal's a deal, you can have my soul, but I'm pretty hungry. Can I have one last apple before I never get to eat again? And the devil's like, sure, why not? YOLO. He didn't say YOLO. It was Ireland way back when. And they go to an apple tree, and Jack's like, can you go up and get one for me? And the devil's like, I guess, sure. I guess a drunk old Irishman isn't very good at climbing apple trees. So the devil climbs the tree, and Jack surrounds the bottom with crucifixes and traps the devil up there. And the devil's like, I will never take your soul if you let me out of this tree. And Jack's like, I'll never get into hell. And he said, I promise. The devil said, I promise. So he lets the devil out, and Jack lives the rest of his happy life in a drunken stupor, I'm sure. And eventually, I'm sure his liver gives out, and he gets to die, but he can't get into heaven because he's a dastardly old drunk. And he can't get into hell because he made a deal with the devil. So what does he do? Well, the devil's like, here, I'll help you out, bud. And he gives him an ember from hell and says, you can meander around and this will light your way. And that's what a will-o-wisp is. Jack walked around with an ember inside of a large turnip for eternity. And that's what weird lights you see at night are. Actually, the funniest part about this is it probably wasn't a turnip, because back then, large turnips were actually rutabagas. They called them the same thing. Isn't that cool? It's a rutabaga. All right, now on to the main event. Where do we get the word Halloween? Well, in 1781, a Scottish poet named John Mayne coined the term. It means holy evening, like hallowed evening. And then they cut off the ing, and even back in the 1920s, you can see that they were writing Halloween with an apostrophe between the two e's, because it used to be like even, like Eve. This day has long been associated with spirits and the like, mostly from the British Isles. So the old Celtic calendar used to end on October 31st. And this day was called Samhain, which was a harvest celebration. This day was kind of like an opposite to Beltane, which I mentioned back in my Bell video, which was the first day of spring. This was like the last day of the year, where the spring one was looking forward to the days getting longer and warmth and stuff like that. Samhain is preparing for is doing the harvest and preparing for winter and that kind of stuff. There was also this belief on both of those days that there was an easier way for spirits to pass into the physical world, and that made an idea of being visited by the dead, or seeing kooky, spooky things. That's kind of where that idea comes from. And then the Catholics had a holiday called All Saints' Day, which is on November 1st. And so that kind of replaced that once the British Isles got Christianized, and they ended up with this 3-day celebration of the dead type deal, where you had October 31st, you had the old Celtic New Year Eve, old Celtic New Year's Eve, and then you had All Saints' Day, and then November 2nd was All Souls' Day. Now, some people think that All Saints' Day is an appropriation of Samhain. Some people think it's just a coincidence. But looking at the history of like Christmas and Easter, I find it easy to believe that they just created a Christian-centered holiday for a celebration that was already happening in pagan religions. But I don't know. You judge for yourself. I'm not a genius. Thank you for watching Word Nerd. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Have yourself a happy Halloween. Bye-bye.